The board, at this time, I'm calling the meeting to order. Ms. Hall, can you take the roll, please?
Yes, ma'am. Dr. Chase?
Here.
Ms. Guy?
Here.
Ms. Halsted?
Here.
Ms. Healy? Here. Ms. Randall?
Here.
Ms. Sigmund?
Here.
Ms. Solomon? Here. And Dr. Warner?
Here.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve the agenda. Second.
Thank you. Discussion? All in favor, cast your vote. Maybe not? Oh, yep, there we are. Tally the vote. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to our one and only action item, item 3.01, adoption of the school board's FY24 local funding request for presentation to the Board of Supervisors and the endorsement of our 5-year plan.
Motion to approve the budget proposal.
Need a second?
Second.
Okay, for discussion purposes, we have a first and a second. Let's go ahead and open this up for discussion, comments, questions. Dr. Chase, do you have any?
Just to make the point that I will be supporting this budget, and to note that in order to stay competitive in this region, we need to have our funding similar to what our neighbors to the south are asking for and what we're asking for in terms of percentage-wise to the number of students we have in this district. We're asking for about the same amount. Thanks.
Thank you. Dr. Warner?
We have, every year, this is my 4th budget that I've done since I've been on the board. And for the first 3 years, almost every single request that we had was cut by half across the street. We have major needs, and 50% of our ask is salary compensation. It's for fixing the teacher scale. It's the uniform salary scale. It's the paras. It's all the things that we have promised the people that we would do. But we need a lot of money to cover that. That's just the way it is. Last year, we faced an extra $1 million in gas costs. We had increases in our energy from Dominion. We had to get a new contract. There are always things going on. And what happens is that when we're trying to make up that difference, we can't do the 3R projects that need to be done on aging infrastructure. This is a big ask, but we need every penny of it. And I support it 100%.
Thank you. Ms. Sigmund?
I think this budget is a great start, but I really, maybe late to the game, but I really do believe that we need to look at this differently. I keep getting stuck on that one slide, and I know you put a lot of work into all your slides, but the one slide with the counties reducing percentage of investment in our budget. It used to be as high as 45%. It is now below 40%. I think it's at like 37. We're potentially looking at 38 or 39. That's a 6% decrease in the county's investment in our schools, which means they aren't funding us for the growth we've had. I think in the county plan, they're only looking at a 3% increase of a few $1 million that won't even cover our growth, and I think that's what's happened over the years. So I feel like we need to look at moving the needle bigger. Like, we don't need to fund just for what we need next year and a little bit more. I feel like we need to play bigger catch-up, and I don't know what that looks like. I did get some numbers. We'd be asking for, at 39%, it looks like about 20 million in increased funding. 40%, we're going up to 27 million, so about every percent is another $7 million. If we were to go back to the 45% investment that the county had in our budget previously, we'd be asking for 65 million. I'm not saying we go that high, but I think we need to make up, I think we at least need to have the conversation about making up some of this lost ground, especially considering it costs us $20 million in 3R every year, and for every million or every dollar we get less than that, we're just adding to, we're making our list longer. We're not gaining any ground on our infrastructure, and then we're gonna have an emergency, and we don't have an emergency fund either. So I understand the need for having a beautiful line item budget, thank you to the people that put it together. But I also have concerns only asking for what we need down to the nickel, considering that by the time June comes around, we could be at $6 a gallon gas. We could have energy issues. We could have infrastructure issues we can't even imagine right now. We could be, I know Lionel's great at his job, but we could have a much bigger bubble of kids moving here or starting schools. I read an article yesterday that the homeschooling population is decreasing and our in-school population across the state of in-school kids is increasing. Are we factoring that in? I just feel like we need to be, I like to say more conservative, but almost be more generous in our ask so that we can be more fiscally responsible as the year carries on and we're not always emergency funding everything and having no wiggle room at all and being at the end of the year asking people to hold off on expenses so we can limp over the finish line. I want to have more money in here for our 3R. I want to have very broad strokes. If we are looking at increasing our ask, I think it should be in broad strokes rather than in line items. Should be at looking at fixing our teacher compensation, our school-based funding, and our infrastructure, period. If how we want to divide that up or add to or not add to, I would love to have for discussion, but I don't think this is enough. No, I'm just offering discussion here now. I'd be interested in hearing what the other people have to say and then maybe consider a substitute motion.
Okay. Ms. Healy?
Well, I support the increased compensation because there have been many years where we have not been able to give anything, and that's why we got behind. But what are you going to do? If you have a certain amount of money, you have to meet your needs. And I appreciate the fact that this is the first year of a 5-year budget, because I think we are looking forward, thanks to Dr. Taylor and his vision. I'm not going to say that this budget is going to look exactly as it's proposed, because I'm sure he's going to even be making proposed changes. But at least we're in a point where we're looking forward, and people can know that we're thinking ahead. They cannot count on anything other than this year, and that has to be clear, so people don't have an expectation, because we have no control over next year's budget. You know, whoever's on the board then will control it. I have a concern, and this is a minor concern in this multi-hundred-million-dollar budget, but I am concerned, and you all heard this at the work session last week, I'm concerned about giving the bonus extra pay to positions that are, quote, hard to fill, but we don't have any vacancies in them right now. I mean, I want to be fair, and I can justify extra pay on positions we can't fill. And we all know, and we've always, as far back as I can remember, not been able to fill math positions. And when we had a signing bonus, but just last a couple years and then they may be gone. So I have no problem with that. The special ed, you know, we have significant numbers of vacancies there. Some of the other, and it's just a few of the positions, but I don't like the message it sends to all the other staff who are in positions that may in fact have more vacancies. And I understand, you know, that HR has that information, and that's going to fluctuate from day to day. But overall, you know, I would have liked to have seen the extra pay for the positions that we have vacancies in now. And I understand that, and I respect, you know, whatever anybody decides, because I think everybody's primary concern is moving the schools forward. But that is a concern that I have with this as it is. And it might be, you know, it's a, what I would see as a minor flaw, but it's still something that's going to send a message, because I don't want to say I'm supporting a budget that gives extra pay for positions that are not vacant, whereas I'm not giving it to the positions that may have some vacancies. So that's where I am, but I do appreciate this. The paras, long time coming. It's amazing what the paras do for us and what they get paid, especially when you look at what Wawa pays or McDonald's pays, and, you know, anybody that Help Wanted signs up. You know, I'm glad we're putting that back in, and I give credit to the board for, you know, making that adjustment. You know, the teacher differentiations, I'm hoping that will continue and we'll get to where we need to be. So I just want to let everybody know when I vote no, if this goes forward as it is, that's the reason. It's minor, but to me, it's important because of the message it sends.
Thank you, Ms. Healy. Ms. Guy?
Ms. Healy, I finally understand why you were talking about it before at the work session. It wasn't making sense to me. But yeah, okay, that doesn't feel great, the message that it might send, so, but I'm gonna support this budget, and if someone's disappointed because, you know, I think the extra money will help those educators actually stay and not leave. Maybe that is why, you know, saying, hey, you know, there's a value here to what I'm doing, I don't know, but people can email me, I'll make you a cheesecake or something if they're pissed off.
And they're good.
Or lasagna, that's the only two things I can do.
I'm gonna email her anyway.
Shut up, I'm not making you anything. But I absolutely agree with everything everyone's saying. You know, we're in between the rock and the hard place. We are right there. We need to get back to being 45% of the county's budget. You know, the $20 million every year is what it's costing us to fix things, yet we don't have that like budgeted in. Is like, so where is that coming from, right? I think this spreadsheet that whoever, the 20 people who did it, is amazing. And I know that for years, all I've heard parroted from citizens and the Board of Supervisors is, what does the school board do with their money? We don't know what they do with their money. They're not fiscally responsible. They find money here and there or lose money here and there. We've heard that for like 15 years in Stafford. So now we've got this budget that is showing to the dollar what we're doing even at the schools, right? So we can leave that narrative alone, and it's very clear where our money is going to, and it's not going to us, right? And it's not going into the infrastructure either. So I think it's time that the narrative change, the culture change, and we start getting funded. And I think it is time that we start going big or go home, or we're not going to have a school system to go to.
Thank you, Ms. Guy. Ms. Halsted?
So I'm not as advanced as Maya right now. I'm still not 100% clear with Ms. Healy's concerns. I'm sorry, Ms. Healy's concerns. So, but I'm going to support this budget as well. I do want to talk a little bit more about Maureen's suggestions and what she's thinking as a way to sort of maybe codify the thought process in presenting the budget or in advocating for a substitute motion. But let me start first by saying that I find the whole budget process to be, let's use the word interesting just to keep it above board, but I'm pretty frustrated, and I don't often throw stones across the street because I get that they have so many multiple and competing things on their plate that I don't have to think about, I don't have to consider, I don't have to worry about, and so I try to respect that piece of this pie, but, you know, as a citizen and a resident of this county, like, I'm frustrated that, you know, the worth of a county is 100% based on, first, schools and kids. Is it a place I want to raise my kids and my family? And currently, the way the school system sits, I think we've got a ding on our record, and I think it's very clear that we're not getting the point across the street that we can't handle any more houses. We cannot handle another subdivision going up. We cannot handle any more. I mean, there are so many homes planned to be built in Stafford County, and it's not thoughtful. We're not considering what that actually means for those of us who are already here, for our kids who are already in these schools, for the work that has to be done to support bringing them up to par. And that's very stressful for me, and it's very disheartening. And I hope that attitude changes when they're looking at this budget, and when they understand that if our schools don't come first and we don't show this, we live in a world as adults that isn't about us, it's about the next generation behind us, and the kids that we're bringing into the future, right? We have our experiences, we're living off of our adult stuff. And for me, the school system itself sells the whole package. So I feel like for us to put, and that's why I supported bringing these numbers back into the budget to begin with, because I don't think, and that's also, Ms. Healy, why I brought up what you were saying, like, I don't see how we can, someone's always gonna feel sort of left out of the mix of the package or whatever. We need to start somewhere. This starts us somewhere. Our paras, hands down, have to be a top priority for us. I don't think we function or make up on all of our pandemic losses without them at all. Like, I just don't think we have that capability without them. And I laugh as I look at it too, because I'm going through this thinking like, okay, where can I get $1? Where can I get a nickel? When it comes back and they've cut my budget, who do I cut? How do I cut that? That's the message to me that says that I don't think these are important one way or the other, right? Like, okay, you only give me this much money now, who goes away? What goes away? How? We did that for a long time. So it's now time to bring this is the value that Stafford County has, right here. I mean, probably more, but, but right now, this is what we're worth. And this is what I feel should be given to us. The whole budget should be supported, hopefully across the street, because in my mind, can't afford to lose any more teachers to competing counties. We can't afford to lose any more administrative personnel or, even families moving to private schools and homeschooling. I read the same article that Ms. Sigmund read. Some of that is probably as parents become more comfortable post-pandemic, letting their kids back into school as they begin more, or feeling less conflicted about whether to send them into the school systems. But here in Stafford County, you want to bring me, 600 new kids or 1,000 kids a year, with what money? I mean, I don't go to the store and buy $1,000 worth of groceries because I don't have $1,000 in my pocket. But that's what you're doing to us. You're giving us 1,000 kids and you're telling us to house them and educate them, and we can't. So, I will support this, but I will also support hearing more conversation about what Ms. Sigmund was saying, and if Ms. Healy wants to tell me later what she meant, that'd be great too.
Thank you, Ms. Halsted. Meraki?
So I think that this bill is a very good start, and I like that it has a 5-year plan. It shows that we're planning in the future, that we have more plans, more things that we want to get done, and I definitely think that is a foot in the right direction. But at the same time, I still think that we could be more audacious in what we're asking, because all of this, there's nothing that is a want. All of this is a need. And like many have said before me, when we send it back, people are going to get cut, and we're going to have to decide who gets cut. And I don't think anyone should. And I think specifically we should be really focused on our teachers and our staff, because that's where the money's going to. And they are the backbone of the whole community, the whole county. And there's just, I think we should be more audacious. It's better to ask for more and walk away with more than to ask for less and be cheated out of what we already have. So none of this is needs.
Can she present our budget over there? Because she's pretty good.
None of these are needs. They're all wants. Or sorry, none of these are wants. They're all needs. And I think that the county deserves it, our students deserve it, and so do our teachers.
Great. Thank you so much, Meraki. Okay, so I'm going to say I'd be interested in a substitute. I will support this one budget. I will say that, we've had, this is my fourth budget I came in the same freshman class as Miss Warner. And I will say that each year has been really difficult coming into and out of pandemic. And one of the things that has been, like equally screamed is learning loss and teacher retention. And I feel like, in the way that we're setting up our staffing standards, I think is going to most benefit our students in helping them step across the line in their learning loss. But at the same time, in doing so, we are going to need the staff to come to us and stay with us. And we've made steps where we have seen results that is happening. And that we're being sought out as a place to work, that we're being a place where they're willing to give us a chance, another year, to stay in our classrooms, which is a huge benefit. If you're an elementary mom, you'll understand this, but if you go when your last child or when your child is in elementary school and where they start in kindergarten and where they finish in 5th grade, you're gonna look back and say, are all my kids' teachers still here? That's what I did. And so even when I have 6 years difference between my oldest and my youngest, and when they went through, I was so excited that of all 3 of my kids' teachers, only one wasn't there. And, the same kindergarten teacher all 3 kids had. There's really something nice about that kind of stability and continuity in a school for our families. And I really feel that asking for, it's nice that we have line items that make sense to us because we understand the parts and pieces of our school system. But I think in conversations, we really do need to look at the percentage of loss in the money that we have received. And I'm not saying they haven't done what the best they could do at that time, but now we are doing better on our side, making sure that we figure out the numbers of kids in our transportation system, the number of kids that are getting nutrition services or special needs services. We've really done a lot of work to make those things show up and be counted, and we want our counterparts to show up and acknowledge that growing by 500 and 600 kids a year is a costly investment that they have to make, and they haven't. So I'm very interested to hear how we end up with our vote this evening, but I will be supporting. Does anyone else need to have a conversation?
If you
Yes.
don't support it, then how does that
It
look?
still passes.
I know it still passes, but how does that look moving forward for them?
You know what, it passes. That's the point. And mine is more making a statement. I just, and
And
I'll talk to
honestly-
Ms. Halston and explain it, but there is a rationale there, for me, at least.
So, with that, Ms. Sigmund, would you like to make a substitute?
I would. I would like to make a substitute motion, where's my language here? That our full non-categorical appropriation should be $442 million.
Which adds to what percent?
That comes to about 43%.
Okay. So the substitute motion is 442 million at a 43%
And
ask.
I'll second for the purposes of discussion.
Okay, and I have a second, great. All right, so let's go ahead and start discussions. Dr. Chase?
I would prefer if we start with Ms. Sigmund and
Okay.
just ask where in the budget she plans to put this money.
Great.
So I'll start with my rationale, and my rationale is that last year when we looked at adjusting, fixing, whatever adjective you want to use or verb you want to use for our teacher scale, Dr. Taylor said, we needed to make a significant investment so that we could jump that line up, and then we could make our incremental increases as time went on. And I feel like that's what we have to do here. We need to jump our line up. And then moving forward, we can have more manageable percentages so that we are less in this crunch at this time every year moving forward. So we get to a point where there, luckily, hopefully are no surprises. I am not great at math, but I would like to have this extra funds be, as I said, to be appropriated for further improvements in our teacher, or not our teacher scale, our employee salary project, our student services, like the differentiated compensation, and school-based needs, as well as our 3R. Whether we divide that 3 ways, there are people that have far more knowledge than me on the best way to do that, and legally speaking, the requirements for appropriating those funds, but I think we need to have them, because we can't keep making tiny steps and expect to make up any ground. We need to make big steps and keep going.
Okay, does anyone else have Dr. Warner or Dr. Chase? Okay.
I think that, I appreciate what Ms. Sigmund is saying, and I agree with it, because the problem is, and I've used this analogy at our town halls, is that we've been digging a hole, and the first rule when you find yourself in a hole is to stop digging, and we've been still digging. And now the problem is all that is here. We have to pay our teachers more. Most of our increase goes to the compensation scale. It goes to our teachers, goes to our paras, goes to our uniform salary scale. We have 3-hour projects, 15 to 20 million a year that we cannot cover. So it's not that these extra funds can't be earmarked specifically for things, but it gives us the breathing room to fix the scale so that we're competitive, because Spotsylvania is nipping at our heels, and Prince William is stealing our teachers. So we're investing in training them and then losing them. So I appreciate that this is a big ask, but I also think that it's something that we have to work towards as a county, is having a predictable percentage of the tax revenue.
Thank you, Dr. Warner. Anyone else? Oh, Ms. Halsted?
So let me just say a couple things first. So that's, let me make sure I understand where we're going. We would be establishing the 43% as the number we would be requesting every year, or just for this particular year, and moving forward, we would adjust and accommodate as?
Just this year.
Just this year. And would that 43%, how would we fluctuate and justify, or how would we justify fluctuations in the actual percentage? Because we could go down, we would go up, like where do we justify? Or how do we justify that percentage?
So for me, I was more interested in the solid dollar amount, but I
Okay.
was also interested in how much closer it got us to where we had been at the 45%.
Okay,
I feel like, 37, 38 to 45 is a huge jump. I'm not looking to go all the way to the top, but I feel like we owe it to our students, our constituents, our employees to ask for what we need. This is, by any means, if you look at our 3R project, we need a lot more money. But I think this is a more responsible ask in order to take care of some of the things that have been lingering, to prevent further cost down the line, to prevent further loss down the line as far as, staff, and to accommodate, future school-based needs, because we haven't been.
so just as a final thought, I think on that, for me is, I'm with Rocky as well in terms of like asking for more, and I don't like feeling like we're settling for, on behalf of these kids, and just gracefully thanking across the street for any little dime that they'll give us, because that doesn't feel right, given the delays in building buildings. And, Dr. Chase, you're fighting for a new school for Drew for how long? And we should not be the county that's doing that. I feel a little bit like the 3R project is really the biggest burden for us right now because of the quality of our buildings, and that maybe there is some value added in looking at the 43 percentile mark because of that. As we sat here last year trying to prioritize fixing fire alarms over other things, but also, the simple things that go back to all the kids that came here to talk about, from North Stafford, to talk about their auditorium. Like, we shouldn't have kids coming to us begging for us to put their auditorium projects on, especially after what I just saw at Stafford High the other day and how amazing it was. Like, those arts programs should be funded, and they shouldn't have to come here and beg for a light or go to Amazon and find a light. So that would be my biggest reason, I think, for supporting something like that, is taking a look at that 3R project and the number of things that we could actually accomplish with the additional funding.
Yes, Dr. Chase?
Yeah, so I guess for me, I need to have a little more clarity about where the money is going. Like, if we're passing a budget, we need to know sort of what line item, where would this additional 13 million go? So I would like to ask Dr. Taylor if he has any recommendations of where we would look to put this.
Well, you certainly have a number of needs that have been clearly articulated. And it's difficult to prioritize those needs because they're all urgent, particularly compensation. You could advance an entire phase for both licensed and non-licensed scale. This is a difference of 19 million from what the school board directed staff to create, and a $56 million difference above this past year's budget. So there's a lot that can be done. That $19 million number, though, sticks out kind of interestingly, because the funding level that we should fund our assets for 3R is $19.5 million. So backing out the $5 million that you already have in your budget and having this $19 million, you could do substantial movement on getting through your 3R list and funding that in perpetuity. And having the balance committed to compensation in a couple of really strategic ways. Not to mention, and this didn't get as much play as we had discussed in the previous budget cycle, but that differentiated school site allocation and how we could help alleviate some of the burden to families and to schools in terms of providing materials and supports as well. Any way that you go, you do have, it seems, 3 really rock-solid avenues to pursue where you could make substantial headway and possibly even solve a problem. The solving of the problem is you could solve your 3R funding issue. Answer, that could happen. You could advance yourself another phase, possibly more, in compensation, but not both. You could position your school site allocation and do your 3R. You could position your school site allocation and compensation. You could get multiple things done and advance your 5-year plan pretty substantially on that.
So then I guess my question is, what are we proposing in this substitute motion that we would do? And that's what I would need to know before I could vote.
Ms. Sigmund?
So I have concerns that the more specific we are, the easier we make the math of other people. And that there are people in our community who would be like, darn it, if they had only put that extra money towards school site allocation, I would have passed it. Or if I only put it towards the 3R, I would have passed it. At the end of the day, we don't know where we're gonna put that money because we don't know if we have that money. We don't know if we're gonna get that money. We need to know, we can tell them what we need. It's far more than we're asking for. But when we get our appropriation, I feel like that's when we decide where we can spend the extra money. I don't, again, if someone can correct me legally, if we have to legally delineate where that is, but I have a problem legally telling people where we're putting money and having them just decide, well, that's not what the superintendent asked for, it's what they're asking for. We need all of this. and we need more.
Yeah, so, Madam Chair and members of the board, how you have your resolution stated is what you're legally obligated to communicate. Any additional information that you provide is context and background for the Board of Supervisors in their decision-making. You're not required, but by any stretch, to provide that. And you're also not a categorically funded school division. You're a non-categorically funded, so you get one lump sum in your county transfer. Other school systems are set up in a way where their county charter has a certain amount going to specific categories. That's not Stafford's situation. So what you are required to communicate is what is on your resolution.
I guess I'm trying to defer that debate, because Dr. Chase, I would like nothing more than to sit with you in a few months and debate where all this money is going. But I really do fear that in a couple of months, we'll be sitting together with our calculators, trying to figure out how to make it all work. So I'd like to kind of defer that. Of course, if anything in these bottom funds needs to be adjusted because they're a percentage of the big, long number up top, then by all means change them. But I really just think that our non-categorical appropriation needs to be higher, and that when the time comes to figure out where it's all going, we will sit down again anyway, because that's what we do every year. And that we have basically more money in our account to get things done for the things that we have prioritized.
Ms. Healy?
Wow.
In 20 years, have you seen that?
Well, I have to tell you, the first year I was on the board, we asked for $20 million, and we got $10 million. Of course, I was a rookie, and I'm thinking, that's good. And the chair of the board then made a comment that I will never forget, okay? This is 24 years ago. She goes, well, if we get 10 million, I feel like we hit a home run. And my response was, if 10 million is a home run, why aren't we asking for 10 million? Why are we asking for 20 million? And the answer was, well, you have to ask for more because you're not going to get what you ask for. I didn't agree with it then, and I have consistently tried to support budgets that I thought were practicable, that met the needs. Were they ideal? Of course not. You know, we could use a lot more money. There's so many things we can do. But money isn't growing on trees, and, you know, it's not in our greenhouses. I try to be practicable. That's the reason I had the concern with 0 vacancies and given extra money. If we can fill the positions with the current pay, why would we pay extra for these and not others? So I think it's not going to be a surprise to anybody that I could not support just asking for $13 million more because I wanted a percentage. Now, I have talked with Ms. Sigmund, and I think this idea is certainly, worthy of follow-up and discussion. And in fact, that's what I had suggested when we talk about a revenue sharing agreement. So we will be able to count on a certain percentage. But that's going to be something that, in my view, has to take a lot of effort on both sides to work out. The fact that we used to get a higher percentage, to me, doesn't really say, we're getting cut. It says that there's more demands on the county. There's higher revenue coming in from the county. I don't, there's so many facts that I would have to know to even look at that and make an assessment. And I certainly am in no position to do that tonight. We're voting on the budget. So I would like to explore that for the future. And I would like to explore these other uses. Of course, we all know we could list, we could fill up a pad of paper with ways to spend that money if we had it. But, my response would be if the superintendent put it in his budget, which he is by law required to give us the needs of the school division, and he set them out. I think he, very consciously did a, the 5-year plan. But if they were the needs, then they would have been in there. I mean, it's going to depend on how you define needs. We added to that, and we did not do an insubstantial add. When you look at the millions of dollars that this board added to the superintendent's proposed, and now the proposal is to add another 13 million, more or less. So there is no way I could support that, getting it tonight and based on a simple percentage of the county budget, which is not to say that, you know, if I'm here next year, that I wouldn't consider it. But I would want, you know, to start with our FAB and to have this board look at it, to deal with the Board of Supervisors, you know, on it, and have an informed discussion, so we could, you know, make a decision on that. So this one, I really don't even have any angst about not supporting this one, because I don't, no, I'm sorry, it's not personal, but I mean, for me, it's just like, 13 million, why not? No, my answer is no.
Thank you, Ms. Healy.
It's not personal, Ms. Sigmund, because I know you're putting a lot into this. I respect you.
Ms. Guy?
Like I said, go big or go home. People out there are tired of this. Everything that this board, not this board, the school board has been getting underfunded for over a decade. Let's stop asking for what we need, and let's try to get 1% of what we want, and maybe then we might actually get what we need. Because when we ask for what we need, we still get less. Like, we get less regardless. Like, they ain't gonna fund it anyway. So ask for what we want. I'm asking for what we want. They're ready for us to go for it. The parents are telling us that they want us to go for it. So even if we only get, you know, the bare minimum, we went for it. And as a parent, when you know we have all these deficits, how do you not ask for it? Like, I think that's negligent of us. We know that our schools, some of them are not awesome, like the inside, not the teachers and the educators and the beautiful students, but, you know, when you go on school visits or you go pick up your kid, it's like, man, this looks like 1972. It's 2023. And when my kids go to visit their friends in other areas, they're like, wow, they gotta be so rich here. And they're not. It's like, you know, smaller communities than us. So I'm okay with asking for it. We just heard 3 really good places where we could put the money. Us up here, if we're being really super honest, we know there are places we could put the money. We're not just like willy-nilly, you know, woohoo, we got extra money, let's get, you know, party bus or something, which, I mean, there's nothing wrong with a party bus. I like that. I don't know why I brought that up, but I'm just saying, like, it's not like we're gonna have a party with it. We know we need this money. We know where this money can go to, and it's an ask, and maybe it wakes them up and makes them start thinking differently. So I say go for it.
Thank you. Ms. Halsted?
Okay, so I just had a quick question for clarification
Sure.
and purposes, whatever. So, if we adjust the resolution that we have here, right, for the funding thing, Dr. Taylor, what I'm understanding from you is it's just this number that changes. We don't need to do any other work because we are statutorily required to submit something tonight by date.
That's correct.
Oh, all right.
That's correct. What you're required to do is this document, and whatever that number says that you all vote on tonight is the document that gets forwarded tonight, because we are pressed up against the deadline. We are to submit this to the county before March 1. Today is the 28th, so today's the day.
Not enough days in February.
But you will have to come back later during budget reconciliation. This is not anything new.
Right.
After the County Board of Supervisors adopts its budget and the state adopts its budget, and the governor signs the state budget into law, that's when you would come back and do a budget reconciliation and be very concrete about which categories you placed resources in and why.
Okay, so there's nothing untoward about us changing that up and having that block of money lingering, as it were, to them, not to us. Does that make sense?
It's not historically how we have prepared budgets.
Okay.
But in terms of your legal standing, it is not irregular.
Okay. And in terms of just me really quick understand, I mean, for me, this actually requires the county to be a little bit more creative in terms of identifying how we can increase some of the tax revenue around here, like encouraging small businesses to come and open up, encouraging more families to, more things for families to do here, bringing in revenue and getting a little bit more creative with getting us family-friendly activities. Am I wrong in that regard, that we're looking to have sort of a sales tax, piece of the sales tax when we're asking for this, or are we looking at this still coming from property tax? Is that the
Totally
right
separate
question?
issue.
Okay.
Yeah,
And.
that
and
takes time.
Different
Okay.
sales tax conversations would have to ultimately go through the General Assembly and be
Okay.
restricted to capital projects.
Okay.
New construction, renovations, and that
Just
sort of
double
thing.
checking, because it's not something I'm really familiar or comfortable with. All right, cool. Thank you.
Meraki, did we blow your mind?
No, it's good.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to throw that in, I just didn't know.
So in terms of the budget, I just did the math, it's about 22 million, or, yeah, $22 million more. I think it's better because at least that way you walk away, I feel like, in my mind, you walk away with more because you've asked for more, and it's better to go big, go home, be more audacious. At least that way we have more of a fighting chance. I understand that it may not, I guess, be fiscally responsible, but I feel like the cost will give us more benefits in terms of helping our teachers, our staff, and just everyone who makes this community what it is. I think. Thank you.
Yes, Dr. Chase?
Yeah, so I am sort of coming down in somewhat agreement with Ms. Healy in that this seems like a very sudden sort of thing to be thrown out. And for me, I do have some concerns about not really specifying how the money will be spent. You know, this board had a little bit of an issue 8 years or so ago before I got on the board. And so I think it is important that we are very clear about our intent as to how we would spend the money and things like that. So I am also a little, I'm not unsympathetic to thinking about this in the future, but this is not a lot of notice for me. So that's just my thought.
Go ahead.
Can I ask a question? Or did I just see it? Is there a line item in here that, like, you know, my eye keeps getting drawn to like our unfunded contingency for increased unknown revenues? Is there something like that that we can designate it to that we can use as like our emergency fund, or our everything else is paid for, can we use it here fund? Or maybe we can talk about adding it to there when the money comes in, but that we know where it's being accounted for. Right now, that's kind of, I hate to even call it an unspecified fund, but because that's really what it's for, is for the things that we don't know that will happen by July 1.
Well, and also we need to consider the fact that this is like our first approval. There's still a second approval with second discussions. And so if it should be in front of us to do with, we can make some decisions and not necessarily leaving it as a floater. One of the things that I'm, you know, kind of, and Dr. Chase has talked about this a few times, and especially for the last 2 years, the 3R money has just not been there, but the projects are still mounting. So when he's talking about possibilities of this money, and I'm just thinking, you know, our 3R projects list is getting longer and pushed out. And it doesn't even look like some of these projects can move into the 5-year plan because we keep pushing them out. So I also want us to be very cognizant of the fact that we are in the throes of high school 6. We are in the throes of ES 18, but we have got to, in the same sentence, include ES 19. Because our numbers and our spaces are just exponentially growing in a way that we can't do good business if we don't have good space. And so between getting ourselves ES-19 and working on our 3R list, that is getting quite worrisome with our putting off a Drew and putting off a Hartwood. Well, that means there's going to be some things beyond what we have even said we're going to need. There's going to be a surprise. We know that. So my thinking, if this becomes available, is I'm lucky, we're lucky, that we have a second set of conversations before we approve a final budget where we can land that plane. Dr. Taylor?
So I'm trying to reflect back on what the specific question was. You could put it in a line that is contingency reserve. You, of course, aren't obligated to communicate that, so it is imaginary to a certain degree. You are probably better off committing it to 3R as a temporary standpoint and then coming back and taking a look at where you might readjust later. Because again, you do have the responsibility to do a budget reconciliation after the local government and the state government have concluded their budget process.
So again, I'm still fairly new here, but if we commit an additional 20 or so million dollars to the 3R, where it is absolutely needed, and then we
use
don't
it.
get all this money, as I guess everybody up here predicts, and then we're taking money out of that, how does that make us look to our constituents or even for our colleagues that are like, well, you said you needed all this money, and now you don't? And that's why I worry about committing it to specifics. Do I think that that's likely where it will go? 100%. But I also don't want to make promises that something else won't come up, like $1 million in energy costs that might hit us by next summer. I just don't know. But the fact that we had to move stuff around for that this year because we didn't have a contingency fund in the time it took us to get from budget to that, like, I just, I like to have a buffer. I will go with the will of the board because the money's, we're still, as you like to say, talking about monopoly money until the check hits our account. But I just don't want to be, I want people to know that the point is to use the money where it is needed, when July 1 or whenever we have to commit it for that year. If it's energy, it'll be energy, but it's not going to be on the backs of our kids, on our employees. And I don't want to have as big a fight later trying to figure out where the money is coming from.
And can I just clarify something? So my understanding is you proposed $442 million. And what we've asked for, or what we currently are planning to ask for, or were the primary motion or first motion was $429 million. And so I get 13 million more is what we're asking for. Is that correct? I keep hearing people.
It's really 12.3.
Right. I just keep hearing people say 19 million, and so it's just throwing me a little bit. So I just want to
I
be
think
clear.
they're adding also the 5 million from the PAYGO.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Oh, I just had a
Is
question.
there
It
any
flew
other
out of my head.
clarifications or questions? This is a big vote, ladies.
I just lost my question.
You lost your question? Okay. Has anyone else found a question? A concern?
It happens
Okay.
all the time.
So the motion that we're voting on currently, get your clickers. The motion that we're voting on currently is the substitute motion of $442 million or 43%. So that's on the table. Cast your vote. Tally the vote. Motion passes 6-1.
I just want to point out that you did not say 43% of what? So, but that's, I was going to try to get that in on the motion
Oh,
to
sorry.
clarify,
It
but
only says the
it was
dollar
too late.
figure. Yeah, it does say
Okay.
the dollar figure.
No, but the motion you voted on was 442 million or 43%. That's what was recited. So that was what I heard, and I guess the record could check it, but,
You can also, clarify that too.
yeah, I mean, you
and
might
revote.
want to.
Yeah.
I was going to
Okay.
suggest it be clarified,
Okay.
but the vote went too fast.
The dollar amount,
Okay.
which
Yes, it's the only thing that goes in here is the dollar amount.
Okay,
Madam Chair, you may want to poll the board if that's
Okay.
everyone's
all
understanding.
right, so let me
as
just
well.
pull the board. Is the understanding the dollar amount of 442 million? Dr. Chase? Dr. Warner?
Yes.
Ms. Sigmund?
Yes.
Ms. Healy?
I'm not sure what you're asking me the understanding of. Yes,
What you voted
was-
for was
I
442
voted
up or
against
down?
442 million or 43%. That's what I voted against.
Okay, so maybe we need to revote.
But I'm
so we're
I'm
clear.
only one, so as long as you got
Okay.
enough, it's
Ms. Guy?
fine.
What was the question?
Are you voting for, you voted for 442 million?
Yes.
Ms. Halsted?
Yes.
That's what
Okay.
I understood.
So the poll is that we voted for 442
Okay?
Yeah.
million. Okay? All right. And we are done. Thank you.
That's it?
What? Yeah. What's that?